Hi everyone, Holly Pike here from svgforfunandprofit.com. Welcome to my studio. Today I'd like to talk to you about an item that I use in my studio on a pretty regular basis. How many times have you tried to cut something on your cutter, whether it be the Cricut, the Cameo, or the Scan and Cut? Doesn't matter. This applies for all of them. But how many times have you tried to cut a material and it doesn't cut through, or your settings are just a little bit off, and you wonder, gosh, I wonder why that is. I used the setting that was there, and I used the setting that I always use. Well, the reason is because material thicknesses change, and they vary by manufacturer, and they vary by lot number. Nothing is perfect all the time. So I use something called Digital Calipers. I use this, and what this is it's a little device that opens up, and you put what you're going to measure inside here, and it measures how thick the item is. That way you can get a better idea of what blade you should be using. All three of the machines, the Cameos, the Scan and Cuts, and the Cricuts, have different blades. Now the Scan and Cut really only has two, a regular blade and a deep cut blade, but you still need this information for that. And rather than guessing, I don't like to guess, I like to know and give it my best possible shot the first time. So all of them have different blades, different thicknesses, different purposes. So let's talk about the calipers. Say I want to cut cardstock. I'm going to put this down on my hands now. Say I want to cut cardstock. Here's a piece of cardstock. It's not particularly heavy cardstock, but the package that it came in didn't tell me what pound it was. They measure paper by pound. It didn't tell me whether it was 60 pound or 80 pound or what. So I'm like, all right, well, now I'm going to have to guess at how I cut this. Well, not really. If I take my calipers, I'm going to try and get you a picture here. I close it all the way and I push the 0 button. Now I take my paper, open the calipers, and close them snug. Don't squeeze, just close it so that your item doesn't move. You can see I get a reading. Now it's backwards for you, but it says 0.2 to me. Okay, so I take it out, push it closed, and reset it. I know now that this piece of paper is 0.2 millimeters thick. So I can go to my Cameo or Cricut or Scan and Cut and say, which blade will cut this? Well, odds are pretty good that your standard blade on any of your machines are going to cut this. But it'll also help you with pressure. If your pressure isn't quite right, all this will help to get a really good cut. Let's go back here. So you may say, well, Holly, paper is a pretty easy thing to cut. I can cut paper, and I can cut vinyl. I'm pretty good at that stuff. But let's talk about the other things that you might want to cut and you might want to have some experience with your machines. This is marine vinyl. It's thicker. It's got kind of a backing on it, and it's thicker. Well, I found that on my Cameo, I need to do it one way. On my Cricut, I need to do it another. And on my Scan and Cut, I need to do it another. So all the settings are different across your machines. So I'm going to close my calipers, hit reset, open them up, put them on my product, and just enough so that it doesn't slip out. And you can see I get a reading of 1.0. So this is 1 millimeter thick. Okay, odds are pretty good. My standard blade is going to cut that. Okay? Now I'll take this one, and this one is kind of shiny, so that could have an effect on your cutting as well. I'm going to close it, reset, and check my thickness. Well, this one says 0.8. These are all marine vinyls, but they're all different thicknesses. That's why these calipers are such a great addition to your studio. Close it, zero it out, and measure. Just snug enough so that it doesn't slip out. And I get a 1.0 reading on this. Now this one is textured, so you may need to do a little something different with your blade. But today we're just talking about thicknesses and how to determine which blade to use for which item. So as you can see, marine vinyl might be just marine vinyl as a topic, but they're all different. based on the manufacturer, based on what it looks like. One is shiny with a tougher surface, the other one is textured. But this little tool will help you get in the ballpark for the right blade at least. And that's what I'm interested in. I can make other tweaks and find that. But if I know I have the right blade for that thickness, I'm gold. Okay, let's go to here. Now some of you say you want to cut felt, just regular crafting felt. Well, that's great. Some of our cutters will cut them with these and some of them won't. The Cameo 4 and the Cricut Maker have a rotary blade. I would highly recommend using that. But you can also use your standard blades. So I'm going to close it and clear it out, open it, put it on my product, and just enough so that it doesn't fall out. This is 1.0 millimeters. Okay, so I know my standard blade may cut this, but I also may need to back this because it's a soft product. But again, we're talking about thickness. This one is stiff vinyl, and it's got some, looks like sparkles in here. So I'm going to close it, put my calipers in, and just enough so it doesn't move, 1.5 millimeters. Well, now you may have thought that because it's felt, I can cut it with the same blade or with the same settings. No, you can't, and that's why these calipers are so helpful. This one is thinner than this one. This one's stiff. It's a 0.5 millimeter thicker than the standard felt. That's important to know. That's why I love my calipers. Well, how about balsa wood? I don't know if you've ever tried cutting balsa wood, but you can see I have. I've cut it. This one I cut with the Cricut. I have cut balsa wood, and you can cut it, and it is possible. You just need to know a few things, okay? So let's go down here. This one says on the label that it's 1/32 of an inch. Well, that's great, but our blades go according to millimeters. So I'm going to close it and cancel it, open it, and measure. And this says, if I can get my blade, this says 1 millimeter. Well, if 1 millimeter translates into 1/16 of an inch, that's great. But the 1/16 of an inch really, to me, doesn't matter. What matters is this number right here, is 1 millimeter. So now I know which blade. Do I use a standard craft blade? Do I use a deep cut blade? Now you know. Now you know. This one says it's 1/16 of an inch. So it should be half again as thick, right? Okay, close it. .7. Well, okay, if 1.7 translates into 1/16 of an inch, I'm good, but I know for certain this is 1.6 millimeters. And since I know that your Cameo 4 will cut up to 3 millimeters, and your Scan and Cut will cut with the deep blade 1.5 millimeters, I know that this at 1.5 millimeters is going to be a max for my Scan and Cut CM. If you have the SDX, that goes up to 3 millimeters. You're golden. The Cricut cuts up to 2.4 millimeters. I'm good to go. Okay? So balsa wood isn't a mystery. You just have to know what you need to use. And the measurements that they give you on here are great that they do that, but it doesn't help us to look at that and say, which blade should I be using? Because the blades don't go in inches, they go in millimeters. Okay? Let's look at cardboard and chipboard. This is something everybody wants to cut. Chipboard, cardboard, everybody wants to make these coffee insulator things. Well, let's just take a look at this. Close it, cancel it out. I'm going to go diagonally on this because it's corrugated, and that's going to make a difference when we cut. So I'm going to squeeze that snug, and I get 1.3 millimeters. Okay, now you know. How about glitter paper? This looks pretty heavy. It does not say what weight it is. It just says 12 inches. 12-inch paper. Okay, how am I going to cut it? Golly, I don't know, because I don't know how thick it is. Right now, you're using trial and error. But now we've zeroed it out. And my reading is 0.5 millimeters. Okay, so you probably know that your standard blade is going to cut this but you might need it to be a little more pressure. This is chipboard. These are two different kinds of well, this is corrugated cardboard, and this one is chipboard. And most of the manufacturers sell this chipboard. Let's do the thin corrugated cardboard first. Zero it out. Again, just snug enough that you know it's not going to slip out. And I get 2.0 millimeters. Well, guess what? The Cameo 4 and the Maker and the SDX will all cut this. The CM, probably not. You're probably going to have some trouble with it because their deep blade goes to 1.5 millimeters, and this is 2 millimeters. But that's all right. That's all right because you need to know. Cancel that out. Open this one. This is chipboard that they sell for cutting machines, for crafting purposes. This is, okay, if I can hold it still, 1.1 millimeters. 1.1. Well, every single one of our machines will cut this. How awesome is that? But before, when I just showed you this piece of chipboard, if I had said, oh, it's, kind of thick, I don't know what you use. Now you know what to use to cut it. Another real popular item to cut is puffy foam, crafting foam. Well, I have some from Sulky, and I have some that is just from, I think this is from Michael's, and it's just kids craft foam. Well, let's take a look at it. We'll take out a piece of the Sulky. We use this for embroidery, for puffy embroidery all the time. I'm going to zero it out, open it up. Just snug, don't squeeze, because this will squeeze and compress. So just enough so the puffy foam doesn't fall out. And this says it's 1.9 millimeters. All right, good. That's good to know. But what does the package say? The package says 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters. Is 1.9 close enough for me to be okay with it if it doesn't cut? No, not really. I'd rather know, and I'd rather have it and, get my cut right the first time. Well, now I have this foamies from Darius, and this is from Michael's. It's just kids' inexpensive craft foam. There is no thickness listed on this package. So how would you cut it? Trial and error. Well, I don't like to trial and error. I like to know because I don't like to redo things if I don't have to. So I'm going to zero out my machine, open it up, and take a look. And it says can't decide. See, if you squeeze it, I can make it go all the way down to 1.1. We don't want to do that. I just want to do it snug enough, 1.8. 1.8. So this is a little thinner than the Sulky craft puffy foam. That's okay. It's a little thinner, not much, but if you can make some adjustments to your cutting. What you don't want to do is to try to cut some of these heavier materials and have it drag and pull, and you get that dragging, pulling appearance, or it doesn't cut through, and before you realize it didn't cut through, you take it out of your machine and you've wasted material. With this, you have a much better chance at getting it right the first time because you'll at least know which is the correct blade, and you can find a setting, at least in Cricut, I know you can find a setting that is similar to that thickness, and I think in Cameo you will be as well. I think Scan and Cut, the CM machines are a little more tricky. You can do it, and you'll learn by trial and error, but if you know the thickness, you've got half the battle beat in having a successful cut the first time. I hope you learned something. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for joining me again in my studio. And again, this is Holly Pike from svgforfunandprofit.com. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That helps me have a way to keep moving forward. So again, thanks for joining me. I do appreciate it.